I loved it. I really loved it. The staff were supportive. I mean, obviously, most of them, I've been a student, and then all of a sudden I'm there sharing their lunchrooms and things like that. So it was a really good time. One of the things that, tutoring is you there with staff and you talk about students and you work them through their projects and problems and things like that. But they also asked me, and they made me responsible for the students who went out on site. And I enjoyed that too, and it was totally different. I was an academic. I was a graduate. I was respected all of a sudden on site, as opposed to being Googled at or what have you. So it was good, but I found out many years later that another reason why they'd put me on that was because one of the lecturers had one of those buckets of urine tipped all over him when he went to visit students on site. So I mean, obviously they weren't going to do that to me. But the other photo is Timbertown. We took students there to actually do practical work. What was the other place that they built? Timbertown at Warhope. The students actually built that village. And my students, building students, were in charge of this shingle splitters camp. So that's a photograph of me showing that I had great faith in my students, that what they built would actually take the load it was supposed to. So I'm up on the roof there. That was another experience where one of our male building students, married, decided he would take up with one of the girls, female architecture students. So it was my job to do some little counselling while we're up there, that his behaviour was inappropriate, and did she realise that he was actually a married man making use of her. Okay, that was, next slide, please. Where are we? Okay, I'd been at New South Wales Uni for a while, and then I got this job offer to go to Hawkesbury Ag College. It was Hawkesbury Ag College when I started there. They were starting a new course in environmental health, and they needed someone with building qualifications. So they asked me if I would go there and do it. And that meant closer to home. I was travelling from Currajong to Kensington, and the offer to work closer to home and go back to part-time and actually have some time with our young family was good. It started an academic career of basically new course development. So while we were at Hawkesbury Ag College, I was involved in development and accreditation of the Bachelor of Applied Science Environmental Health, which was the first course in training health and building surveyors in New South Wales. They had a diploma of valuation. We developed that into a Bachelor of Land Economy. We then offered both of those courses through Distance Ed. So the photo up there is myself counselling students when I was Head of Environmental Health, and the bottom one is USQ, the University of Southern Queensland, where they helped us write all of the coursework. I was promoted to Program Leader of Environmental Health, and I guess that was nice. And then something really funny happened. The first head of that school was a nurse, and she actually then moved on and became, they were developing nursing at Hawkesbury, so she moved there. And so Brent, who was there was the three of us that started that course, Brent, being a male, was promoted to head of school. Brent went overseas to take sabbatical, and I became acting head of school. And that was fine. Running a school for me was no different from running a building company. That's what I was trained for: project management, accounting, law, contracts, all the sorts of things that many of you would have done in your business. So I actually obviously did that quite well, because my dean decided, and I don't think it's probably happened again, that he would have an election for head of environmental health. but he had to had elections then for the other, like for science and for, I'm just trying to think, yeah, there was School of Science as well. And so there was an election. He asked me to stand, and I said to him, I would stand, but I would not go out and tout for votes. He said the only condition was I had to ring my head of the head of school, and who was in England, and tell him that this is what was happening. This is what, and so I did. I rang him and I said, look, you know, Paul's asked me to stand. He's holding an election, and I've said I would, but I won't be touting for votes. I was elected by my peers as head of school, and in typical fashion, one of my male counterparts afterwards said to me, I only voted for you because you've got good legs, Carol. So I said, thank you, you know, thank you. But that being head of school, at the same time, next slide please, I mean, academic, you've got to do professional development, you've got to continue. And so Graham and I actually started a Masters in Conservation. We went back and we did our Masters. Actually, we went back for Graham to enrol because a colleague of ours told us about the course, and I thought it'd be really, really good for him to do that because Hawkesbury, where we live, is full of heritage, and he'd been doing some work on heritage buildings. And I went to visit my peers back up in the school. And one of the lecturers said to me, I know you, Carol. He said, you go down there and you enrol with Graham. He said, you will be worried about Graham getting home because it was night classes and that. So I did. I went down to the dean and I said, and he said, hi Carol, what are you here for? And I said, can I enrol? And he said, of course you can. So we did our Masters. Graham and I did that together. Then I also did sabbatical. If you're an academic, after 6 years, you're expected to go out and do more research. As a mum and a wife, unlike my counterpart, the previous head of environmental health, I did my sabbatical in Sydney. I went to the CSIRO Fire Technology Lab, which is where they do all of the large-scale testing so if you look at the walls of these buildings and the materials, the codes say it's got to be fire rated 1 hour or 2 hour or whatever. And CSIRO at Ryde was where they did all those large-scale testing. Probably as high as this, 2 or 3 metres wide. And so that was really good because that was an area of interest. Forestry Commission, I used to spend my days burning samples of timber that were painted with an intumescent paint. And if you don't know what an intumescent paint is, it's a paint material that when flame goes to it, it actually chars, like timber chars, and it gives itself its protection. Well, at the time they were developing that as a material. And so I used to come home smelling like absolutely nobody owned me because it did used to give up a lot of I guess, unpleasant smell. I don't think it was dangerous as far as breathing goes because I'm still here. But that set me up. I obviously had an interest in fire and I had an interest in heritage because the intumescent paint was and is used in heritage buildings to bring them up to standard to the code. Okay, next slide. Being head of school, you get to go on committees, don't you? Sorry. I was approached, I was still head of environmental health, and I was approached by New South Wales Union UTS. They were looking for a third offering for building students because there was a need, and they were considering either Newcastle or ourselves. And so they asked me, and we were lucky enough to get a $300,000 grant to do the coursework, to take me off teaching and spend the time to actually develop the course, engage staff, work out the curriculum and everything else. And the focus of that was to encourage not only HSC graduates or HSC students, but also mature age students back into the industry, to give people who'd actually been practising out in the industry, in the trades and that, who wanted to actually further develop themselves and get a degree to join. So it also introduced the concept of recognition of prior learning, which probably is quite common now, but it wasn't at the time. So as a head of school, I got to be the first female member of Orbia, which is an organisation where all of the heads of schools of the universities, heads of schools of building across Australia meet regularly. There were some fun times there. I was the first female, again, because of environmental health, they set up a similar group. So I also was asked to join FASAP. That's a Fire Access and Services Advisory Panel to the Heritage Council of New South Wales. And that tied in with the heritage with masters we'd done and the fire area. And because I've worked this out now, I was nominated for an Outstanding Women of the Year award in the workplace in non-traditional areas, and that actually came from a CSIRO publication. I have no idea who nominated me for that, but I found an article where I'd obviously been spoken to about what I'd done. Okay, so we set up the building degree. Next slide, please. And the time, when you look back, I mean, all of us in this room we've seen the first person on the moon. Life has changed. For me, as far as the construction industry went, I'm missing. What time was it? I had to look back and think, well, at that time, when I was a student, all the building regulations were state-based. And the government slowly, and they're still not there, but they slowly introduced, they introduced in 1990 the Building Code of Australia, which meant all the building regulations that govern everything that's built were Australia-wide. And that also brought in, by default, all of the Australian standards. So, and this was a significant change. Ordinance 70 was prescriptive. In other words, if a wall had to have a certain fire rating, there was only certain types of construction that had been tested at CSIRO were able to be used to be built to create that wall. The new code, the Building Code of Australia, gave alternative solutions. So that was the start of the fields of fire engineering. At the time, you had heritage buildings, high-storey buildings across the world being burnt down with fires. You had fires, and life safety became, I guess, far more of a... I mean, life safety is very much what building regulations are about. It's not really property protection. And so there was research on people's behaviour in fire, in high-rise buildings and things like that. So it was a time of significant change and development. The Heritage Act had been introduced in 1977. And so there was influencing changes on how do we actually protect people in heritage high-rise buildings, because they don't meet current codes. They don't meet current structural codes either, but we won't go there. They're generally over-designed compared to what they design today. So I was involved in upgrading building surveying students or building surveying practitioners across New South Wales. We had little workshops all across New South Wales, myself and a colleague from UTS. And it was a time, as I said there, for new building professions. The heritage conservation, which is what Graham and I have spent, like I said, since 1980, working in, and fire engineering. And now these days there's an awful lot of fire engineered solutions where they look at new materials and things like that. And one of the things that I also picked up was buildings in hazardous locations, which is bushfires and floods. And so there were sort of changes, and I was lucky enough to be involved in committees and I guess teaching as that area developed. So next slide. Head of school. It's funny when you look back. I was only there for 9 years. I was only in that position. In that time, we developed a Bachelor of Building Surveying, Graduate Diploma of Applied Science, Master of Applied Science and a Master of Applied Fire Safety Design. So it wasn't bad effort for 9 years. And of course you don't do it alone. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry. Where are we? I should explain. Go back, please, sorry. This is my the one on the left is my first master's student. And some of those students are quite you always have, in your workplace, there's always someone special, and I guess I've had over the years a lot of special students. The one beside me, on my left, is Andrew Nguyen. He was a postgraduate student. He was a boat person from Vietnam. And we took students, because Graham had, we took students. I got away with a lot of things I think that a lot of other academics couldn't do. We used to take the students on tours, work tours, not. And so we went to a property, Malgonia, which was a historic site that Graham was working on, and we took the students with us when we did this study. And that's Andrew and the rest of the guys. But Andrew became a counsellor at Fairfield Council, and he actually translated the building code into Vietnamese. And he was just one of a very, very special group. We also took tours to Hill End, men work, and I guess I was lucky enough that I was able to develop the courses and have subjects, obviously choices, on heritage, as well as on bushfires and flooding, as options that the students could do. Next slide, please. Okay, that's just me. I've got one photo of myself in my academic gown. This is our first student graduates of Bachelor of Building, and that was when we became a university. Or we became a university when I was doing once I became head of school. Not that they were linked. I lost that when we lost our house. So I got to wear it once after investing in it. This is just a first group of postgraduate students. When we were at Hawkesbury Ag College, we didn't go, and the academics didn't have to get dressed up then. It's interesting when you look back and you reflect things. Yes, I had to put that in because that's me as an academic.
Members and guests, it's time for the 9 o'clock members cash jackpot.
Okay, I'm almost there.
2,500.
That's not much.
Okay.
The impetus for change came when I never had to watch the budget until I became a head of school. It didn't really impact on me. But the government there was budget cuts coming in 1996. Our school had really developed over those few years that I was head of school, and a local council actually offered, they had voted informally to offer the university $500,000 to establish a chair in building. And of course the chair is your research. She or he is the person that actually goes out there, gets the international reputation, gets money in, and all of those sorts of things that are part of academic life. I didn't get any support from my dean or from the CEO of the uni. They were not supportive at all. And that was hard because at the same time I'm, as a head of school, being said, okay, budget next year, 10%, 30% budget cut. This is what you've got to plan for, Carol. Ongoing discrimination. I mean, it happened. The 3 photos at the bottom are the shot factory in Melbourne. Anyone been there?
Okay, time for the members' cash jackpot.
Okay, we went there for
got member number
a site visit as part of an Orbia conference. I was a speaker at that conference. we rolled up, we're on site, multi-storey building, and the men, and of course I'm the only woman. And this person who was attending that came up and he said to Graham, don't you let my wife know that you've let your wife come on this tour because she wanted to come. And Graham turned to him and he said, don't you let your wife know that my wife let me come on this tour. She's the delegate. He had a red shirt on, and I tell you, after that his face just matched his shirt. But that was the sort of thing that happened. And in the end, sometimes you just, just think, is it all worth it? So as it goes on, meetings, one of my staff used to regularly put little things up on the wall. So that's, she's in a meeting to set up a meeting, discuss a meeting, up a meeting, and it's got me as head of School of Building. And it became like that. It was, I was not being supported to let my school grow. And then the university, they offered redundancies. And we had an accountant, we went to our accountant, and financially for us, it was a godsend. And it was, for the men in the room, my dean had assumed, wrongly, that I worked because I had to. Graham's an architect, he's got his business, but he wrongly assumed that I was a breadwinner. I wasn't. In fact, financially, me as an employee was a financial liability. So I took the redundancy, surprised the hell out of him. He told me I couldn't do it, and I told him I'd done it, I'd given my resignation in. And at the same time, Graham and I have been running tours as part of the outreach of the university and sharing knowledge in heritage. And our local council, and they still are, weren't supportive of heritage. We were seeing all of our heritage just being demolished overnight. Real estate agents were saying to people who had heritage buildings, demolish them over the weekend because the council's not working. And that was what was happening. So I took my redundancy and changed a career. So the next part is, I guess, what I've been doing since 1980 when we did our masters, working beside Graham, not for Graham. Sometimes people say, are you his secretary? Definitely not. But the thing that I found, but I'm also not an architect, and I have to make that clear legally because there are legal constraints. So for me, the work has been more the site analysis and the report writing, and they're the sorts of reports we used to write. Heritage studies, conservation plans, maintenance plans. Grant applications, I must admit as an academic you do get to write grant applications, so I got quite good at that. So I transferred those skills to writing grants for people for conservation work on their buildings. And we got a grant for $500,000 the year after I left university for the same council area for conservation work on a building that had offered the university $500,000 for me, or for us to set up a school of building. My dean, my ex-dean by then, did turn slightly pale when I made a point of telling him that at the graduation. The three slides I've shown there are the sorts of things. Heritage is a passion, but it's also lovely. You find sometimes you just find some different things, or you have different experience. The one on the far left, I'm hopeless on the left. I get left and right.
It's on their right.
It's on there, on your right. That's the little building that we were studying, and the owners sort of gave us a bit of history. Yes, it was two brothers that had built this building and everything else. In the back room, there's all this floral wallpaper. We thought, rather strange, two brothers, So he said, well, you know, the building, you've told us the history, but the building's telling us something else. Yep, well, the building was telling us the truth. These two brothers, one of another family member got herself into trouble. This is in the 1800s. Got herself into trouble, so she actually then went to live and care for the two brothers. But so when you're looking at buildings, you can get your documentary evidence and you can look at your history, but also the fabric can tell you sometimes quite a different story from what you might have been told or what I guess is generally thought. The next one on the top is Parramatta Town Hall. Graham had a job where they were looking at conserving or doing some work on the ceiling. Monday morning, we'd just gone to work, we get this phone call from the builder. You've got to come down, I found something. And what they had discovered was the original ceiling beneath a false ceiling. And the original stenciling was still there. And so the job there changed from what was going to be a refurbishment of the ceiling of the town hall to reinstating the original finish. The bottom one's Goulburn Courthouse. That was a totally different experience. Up on the roof, I'm on one side, Graham's on the other. And we were obviously doing analysis of the roof materials. And I stepped back, and coming out of the window, which is how we'd actually got out onto the roof, there's a policeman with a gun. And guns, we have had guns put to us. And he says to me, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm inspecting the roof. What are you doing?" He, in his, I guess, keenness to respond to someone who'd reported that there were people on the roof of Goulburn Courthouse, hadn't bothered to go and check with the magistrate that we were there working. And so, yeah, I mean, that's... there are things that you just don't expect when you're just working for the government. So, next slide, please. Heritage Tours and Advocacy. And Jeremy knows me because I was chair of the inaugural chair of the Hawkesbury branch of the National Trust, and that was one of the first things I did when I left uni. Sharing knowledge has always been part of what I've done. It's been my work. And my eldest granddaughter says, "Gran always buys practical presents," and she's right. I can't help it. So as part of that role, I've had the privilege of addressing the parliamentary inquiry into the Windsor Bridge project. We lost that one, but I think those who attended some of the functions have heard us report on that. The thing I am really pleased about, that I was part of the opposition to amalgamate Hawkesbury, which is very rich in its heritage, with the Hills Shire, which has managed to actually, because Graham did the first heritage study, destroy more than 50% of its heritage. It's no longer there. So, and we actually spent this afternoon taking photos for another advocacy issue for heritage. Heritage is all over Australia. I hear you talk about, some of you about, going to Europe and things like that, but we've got so much rich heritage here. And what really brought it home for me was that we had a colleague stay overnight one night from an international colleague who actually does assessments for World Heritage. And we took him round the Hawkesbury and showed him some of the places, like Windsor Courthouse and St Matthews. And I was apologising. I apologised for the age of our heritage. And he looked at me and he said, "You can go back to your first." He said, "There's very few places in the world where you can go back to the first example of a church." I mean, and if you've visited World Heritage sites like we have, you go there and you think, my God, this is a World Heritage site, but it's the third or the fourth church because they've had so many wars, or basically wars, or the materials are no longer there. So heritage has been a pleasure for that. Last slide. Oh, yeah, last slide. No, sorry. I've missed one. Never mind. Yeah, here it is. Okay. I wonder. I mean, yeah. When you get an award and they say, oh, you know, you're getting an award for something. So I thought, like, I'll do a reflection and just check to see what is still happening at now the Western. Where are we now? Western Sydney University. It used to be UWS when I was there. Western Sydney Uni. Because I left and I was advised by a former colleague to not go back. And I didn't. I kept up to date with some of the people, but not all of them. So they currently offer a diploma, we can read it here, a diploma, 2 bachelor's degree, 4 graduate diplomas, 3 masters and research degrees. And they have, and I think this is the ultimate irony, they're the leader in the New South Wales Bushfire and Natural Hazard Research Centre. I didn't know that until I did some research for this. But if I go, got to this colleague, how do I describe John? He died just recently, so I caught up with some of the friends from uni. Never met a deadline, had every excuse under the sun. But you know what? He rang me every year until he got a bit of dementia for my birthday, even after I left. This is a graduate, a building graduate, who I have this photo because he sent it to me. I can't remember him, but his name's on the back of it. But it obviously meant a lot to him. Swapan is now the interim head of the School of, what's it called? I had to write it down because it's different. Interim Dean of the School of Built Environment and Design at Western Sydney Uni. He was a tutor. He was one of my, one of my younger staff who came on, and so it's lovely to see that someone who he actually was involved. He's an engineer and he was involved in the tunnelling under Sydney Harbour. That was his experience when he came. But he's obviously embraced academia and doing really well. And so I also researched him, and the ultimate irony also is his research is into intumescence paints and the combustibility of building with cladding materials in bushfire. So that was, yeah. You just never know when you influence someone, do you? What you do. Okay, last slide. Even the strongest people need support, family and friends. This group here, all of the older males are the peers that went through uni with myself, but they were all architects and they were all in Graham's studio group. And we've had lifelong friends with them. Some of them are no longer with us. Other ones, Graham and I, when we graduated, and at that time it was his parents and my mum shared that with us. This has our family, our son Michael, Leanne and Amanda, and that was at the award ceremony just recently. And this is some of you guys when we were in New Zealand many times. So friends and family are also important. So thank you all very much for allowing me to share, I guess, my life. I don't do that normally, and anybody, yeah, it's not... You don't, yeah, I don't know. It gave me the chance to go back, actually, so thank you very much, to see what is around now from what I did. Thank you.
Carol, I can't believe what you've done. I mean, that's amazing. I look at my life now and think I've done nothing. I've got to start again.
No.
I tell you what, Graham, I don't know. Christ almighty, she didn't cook, did she? Boy, but just a bit of irony. They're talking about the bushfire. Unfortunately, Graham and Carol lost their house in the bushfires about 10, 12 years ago up there in the mountains.
No, try 26, 25.
25?
Yeah, 2001, Christmas.
Oh, 25 years ago.
25 years ago, yeah.
So, and I know when we were in New Zealand, once they had to hop on the plane because the
Yeah,
bushfires
at
were
Canberra.
quite close too. Quite close. Now, just one question.
Yep.
You're talking about cladding and fires. So that big building that went up about 10, 20 years ago in England, and because of the cladding on the outside.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, why wasn't that? What's happened about that sort of stuff?
Oh, there's buildings in Sydney that have got that cladding on.
Still there.
They're still there, yeah, yeah. If you go back to the example on the moon, when we were growing up, we didn't know what we know now. Like for fire, I had a student who was starting to. They were just starting to get the chemical equipment that could read the chemicals and interpret the change of chemicals that occur when you've got a fire. Now they can predict it much better. So it's the technology and the knowledge that's helping. But in the meantime, we've made some awful mistakes with materials. Yeah.
Has anyone else got any questions of Carol? You can see why she got an AM, can't you?
It's just interesting, Carol, what you said about like the historical. Like people are sitting in a jet for 22 hours to go and look at the old things overseas, and yet we come here and we want to instantly pull them down.
Yeah.
It amazes me.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I think Australia's got a lot to thank the Builders Labourers Federation in the
Oh, yeah.
60s
Yep.
and 70s.
But
Jack Mundy.
Jack Mundy, yeah.
For the building industry, he was a tyrant, but from a heritage point of view, he actually put
He did, yeah.
Saved the rocks, didn't he?
He did, yeah.
The cross.
Yeah.
Up the cross.
Wow. I can tell you a funny story. I did architecture at Sydney University, and this is so crazy. I don't know why we did it, but we used to have things called demolition parties. So this is what happened. This is what I remember one out at Coogee. There was 2 old terraces that had to be knocked down. So you took all your grog and your stuff out there, and you sledgehammer at midnight and knocked the house down. And I don't know how we didn't get killed. Just come to think of it, that's really interesting. But also, we've got to get you guys then to do a Wednesday run where you give us a little bit of a tour around the Hawkesbury. Don't you think that'd be a good idea?
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, we can do that.